Hey guys, welcome to this video. Today I want to show you something different. I noticed that often when we talk about mixing, we always say that a key to a good mix is a really good recording, yet at the same time, very rarely do we actually show you what a good recording is or what a good recording has to sound like. We might have examples or we might show, but we don't really show you, we don't really talk about all the details. So today I want to show you some drums, guitars, bass, vocals, that I think are really well recorded and that I think can be mixed really well. So that and more in today's video. Let's do it. So let's jump right into Logic. I'll show you a drum kit that was sent to me as part of a song. I think this drum kit is really well recorded, one of the best drum recordings I've had in a long time actually. This is a benchmark I would say that you can strive to. This is something you can achieve. Of course it might be difficult for some because you don't have a room or an expensive kit or good mics or a good drummer, etc, etc. So a good drum sound has a lot of ingredients, and if one of the ingredients fails, then the whole kit will fall apart. So a good drum recording, let's be honest, requires a really good room where the drums will be recorded, a really good drummer that knows how to hit that kit, a really good drum kit that is also really well tuned, so this is already 4 ingredients, recorded by an engineer who has really good microphones, and the engineer has skills. So that alone, just from the top of my head, that's 6 ingredients to get a really good drum sound. So if you're making music in your home studio, that will be quite difficult to achieve. But what I say is that you can get a really good drum sound, just simply program it. I honestly believe that a really well programmed kit is much better than a badly recorded real drum kit. I know many videos, YouTubers will tell you, oh, a real recorded drum kit is better than anything else and no drum software will come close to it. Bull. A badly recorded kit will never sound as good as a well-programmed kit. Just add some velocity fluctuations to it, you know, have some kind of a decent software, have Steven Slade drums, Addictive, the Native Instruments stuff, like all of those are really good. Even the Logic drummer is really good. It's just knowing about how to process them, and processing it doesn't take long. Bit of treble, bit of bass, bit of 200 hertz mud reduction, that's it, and you're happy. So anyway, let's jump into Logic and I'll show you this particular kit, what it sounds like. Some of it is quite surprising, but I think it's still a very good recording. Let's have a look. So I have muted everything in this session, and we only have the drums playing. I have mixed this song already, so all the processing, all the plugins are on, but I have turned everything off. So what you will hear now is just the kit, which is leveled and panned as I wanted it to be. Okay, so what you can hear is that all the ingredients are there. There's a really good kick and snare with clear transients, they're poking through. We can hear the cymbals very clearly. The toms are also really well tuned, so the whole kit sounds very cohesive. We have overhead and room mics, which support and complement each other really well. So now let's have a look at the individual ingredients. So I'm gonna open my kick group and let's have a look. So here we have a kick-in microphone. Let's have a look at that. So this is what a kick-in microphone should sound like. Not very spectacular, but it has a clear transient. It is quite, you know, it doesn't have a lot of excess bass, which is good, but it doesn't have harsh top end. Most importantly, there isn't a lot of bleed. Let's have a look at another section here. We don't hear a lot of the snare, which is really good. No cymbals are bleeding through. So this is a kick that can be worked with. How would I treat this kick now? Of course, I know that this sound will be part of a whole. So what I want to do on this particular track now is only reducing that little bit of the mid-range that was bothering me. This is everything I want to do to this kick. It's perfect otherwise. It's really, really good. Let's have a look at the kick out. Okay, same thing, no bleed, very transparent, really good sound. This has a lot more bass, so this will carry the low end of our kick. Doesn't have a lot of issues, it's very well tuned, it's really tight. So again, what I'm gonna do is just some simple cosmetic things. And that's it. Individually, this is all I will do to these two kicks. Of course, I have aligned them perfectly before so that the transients are perfectly overlapping, which is very, very important. Then I'm sending these to my kick group where I'm doing a little bit more. I put the tape on it, doesn't do anything really, just a bit of color, doesn't even matter. Okay, so what I can hear now is that adding the two kicks together, the sound has of course changed, so we have a bit more lower mid-range, we have a bit more of the treble. So here now treating this together, I want to get rid of some of the extra low mids that came up. I want to shape the lows a little bit and add a bit more punch, attack and a bit more click on top. So let's have a look. Let's turn these off. So what am I doing with the EQ? So as you can see, I'm taking out this low mid mod that appeared that wasn't really obvious individually before. Yeah, that's much better. I'm adding a bit of attack, which is usually between 1.5, 4.5K. That's the nosy one that will actually poke through the mix really well. And a bit of top, so this is also set to a bell curve, so I'm adding a bit of, what is this, 12K. For me it is very important when I'm shaping the kick that I don't want to boost really narrow bands on a kick, because what that will do is that you might get a really good attack, but only on one set of speakers where this attack is very clearly audible. So what I do, I like to do really broad boosts at multiple frequencies. So I have kind of multiple clicky frequencies, so I know it will be audible on a smartphone, on DT770s, on my Yamahas, on my Neumanns, and on home cinemas, cars, everything. And a little bit of bass boost as well. That's it. We can hear that the kick was played really steadily, which is great. But that said, I did add a little bit of very mellow compression, 2-to-1 ratio, medium attack, medium-ish release, just to keep it even steadier than it already is. So again, I'm not looking to shape any transients here, I'm not looking to alter the sound, I just want to keep it steady. And to keep a kick drum or even a snare steady, low ratios and medium attack and release times are really, really helpful. And then this just to add color, but honestly, doesn't matter. Cool, so this is my kick. So let's have a look at the snare. We have a top and a bottom microphone here. Let's see how they sound without anything on. So it's not a very spectacular sound, you could say. It definitely doesn't sound like a sample pack. It definitely doesn't sound like a rock song. But what's important is it doesn't have a lot of mud. It has a clear transient. It doesn't have any bleed, which is probably the most important. So the hi-hat is actually surprisingly quiet in this snare top microphone, which is really, really hard to achieve. So this is a really good starting point. This is something we can shape really, really well. Now in the snare, I do a little bit more because this will carry most of the sound. So let's have a look. So I'm adding two EQs here. One is to add a little bit of top end and reduce a little bit of this mod in the bottom. Low cut at 70 just to make sure there's no kick bleed, and a bit of a top end boost. I remember when I did this, I added this after I boosted this because here I ran out of treble to boost. I really love this EQ because it's a really broad bell curve. So this is not a high shelf, this is a bell at 12K, and it's really, really broad. So it doesn't just boost treble, it makes the snare seem louder. It just really emphasizes the tone of the instrument. Let's have a look. So this is really good. As you can see, I boosted a bit of 100. This is also a really, really wide bell, so it's probably boosting a bit of 200 as well and a bit of 60 as well, which is fine by me. It's just to give a bit more body. And then I used a similar compression setting, 2:1. Actually, it's the same medium attack and release. Let's have a look. And as you can see, I'm not crushing the snare. This is barely compressing 2-3 dB. It's really just to keep it a little bit steady. But also at a 2:1 ratio, that means that actually the sound, the snare is 4 to 6 dB above the threshold if we are compressing 2 to 3 dB. It's a relatively low threshold, but with really low ratio settings. So this is very good. Then what I do for snare bottom, I usually just copy paste the settings. Let's have a look at before. Really cool. As we can hear, we get this usual rattle with every kick hit as well, which can be very pleasant. It can be really cool if blended in. It will add a really cool gritty sound to the kick as well. And then, yes, I just copy-pasted the settings, but I'm compressing the bottom a lot more to get a lot more of this cracky sound. Otherwise, it's the same settings, I believe. I knew I wouldn't be able to get rid of the kick bleed. So, if you can't fight it, then make use of it. So I made use of it by smashing it completely and blending it in so it gives a little bit of color to the kick as well. And here I'm compressing with a 6:1 ratio, fast attack, medium, fast release, medium attack to really kind of flatten it out. And then these two together, it was somewhere around here. Again, after the fact, I realized, damn, okay, I need a bit more treble, so I took another SSL EQ, boosted a few dB here. Now there's something really, really important that I'm doing on the snare. As you can see, I'm using this channel emulation that is clipping, and it's clipping on purpose. I set this up very, very carefully. Because what I wanted to achieve is getting a lower dBFS reading while increasing my dB RMS reading, okay? Which means that I'm chopping off the transient, which would mess with my drum bass, my master bass, and my master bass compression, because it's a really, really harsh transient. I'm chopping that off to get a louder body of the snare, okay? And it's essentially a form of compression, but instead of smoothing it off and using a compressor that has an attack and a release time, I'm using something like this that just clips it. It just shaves it off without an attack and a release. It's just instantaneous. Therefore, it doesn't change how the snare reacts. Okay, so let me show you. Essentially what I'm doing is I'm chopping this portion of the signal off. Why? Because we don't really need it. We don't hear it. Our ears are really slow to react. We will never notice that it's gone. But what it does in our mix is it gives us a higher reading here, a higher FS reading, which is then problematic when this goes to the master bass, etc. I would have to decrease the level, blah, blah, blah. So let me show you without. This is a pre-fader metering here. Okay, so this is the actual level of this snare signal with only the EQ and without this clipping. So our highest level is at plus 0.2, so we're clipping this channel. Now if I put it on, it stays steady at minus 0.7 because I'm clipping it there, which is amazing, So I saved almost a dB, or a bit more than a dB of level here, which is really, really cool. Can do this even more just to showcase. So with really clipping it, I can get a reading of minus 6.5. I'm creating a lot of headroom here, okay? And the sound still hasn't changed. It doesn't sound any different, really. Cool, I'm gonna stick to that. So this is a cool trick, definitely use it. On snare, on kick it doesn't work too much because kick is very bassy, so it will create some distortion. It really only works on snare and high-pitched, transient heavy instruments, okay? Let's have a look at the hi-hat. As you can see, I edited the hi-hat, so in any place where the hi-hat is not playing, it's gone, we don't need it. So there's quite a bit of bleed. This recording is not perfect, but it's good enough. And what I have to do here is a bit more. I reduced this nasty low end, this nasty mid-range, and a bit of treble, because I added a lot of treble later on in the mix to the drums, so it was just a bit too much. And this is it. This is a good hi-hat for me. This works. Let's have a look at the toms. Toms are extremely hard to tune. Most drummers don't hit them hard enough either, and they're really, really hard to record. It is a very large instrument that we're trying to capture with really small microphones usually, so that's quite a contradiction. But this is really good here. Also, as you can see, I edited them, so where there's no toms, everything else is gone. I have a really short fade in here to keep the transient intact, and otherwise there's nothing else. Now I have a tom, kind of a default tom setting that you can see up here that just works on pretty much every tom, because every tom always has the same problem. It doesn't have enough treble, it usually doesn't have enough good lows, and it usually has a nasty mid-range at around 3 to 500 Hertz. So this is kind of set up by default for me. Let's have a look. So this is it. You can basically copy these settings, use similar EQs. This is just a bell EQ and around 100 Hertz and 3-5 kilohertz. A noise gate just to get rid of any excess bleed, but even without it, it works. Just a bit tighter with the noise gate. But yeah, this is a really, really good rack tom. Let's have a look at the floor tom. Basically the same settings. I think a bit more boost here, a bit more cut here. It's maybe a different frequency as well, but basically the same thing. So these are the two toms. These are really well recorded, I think, very well tuned, really well recorded, so mixing becomes really easy. Cool, so I saved the best for last on purpose because for me the actual essence of the kit is the overheads and the room mics. So I think if a drum set is put in a not too good room, then it doesn't matter what else you do to it, it will not sound good. So either have a really dry room, so you don't get any, room information in it. You can put, a ton of rock wool in your room and record a kit there. It's probably better than having it in an untreated living room. I recorded a whole album actually in a living room, which became actually quite successful, and we used a lot of absorption. So instead of trying to fix something that is unfixable, we just used a lot of absorption in that room to kill the drum sound, and then we used some reverbs later on to add back some life to the kit. Works really well. So let's have a look at the overheads. As you can see, we have a left, right, and a center. I really like the occasional center overhead mic, because the side overheads, they tend to lose a little bit of the focus. They're really good to capture the toms, the hi-hat, and the cymbals, but I do like the occasional center mic. This is not my recording, but I'm really happy to have it here. So let's have a listen individually. So as you can hear, it gives a very good, very clear picture of the kit, which is the most important. So the overheads are the most important element of any drum recording. In my opinion, it should give a very clear picture of the kit as a whole. Ideally, you should be able to tweak the overheads and then not do anything else to the kit. And of course, this is impossible, but it should be, if you can get a good overhead sound and good spot mics, then you are sorted. So I have these panned hard left, hard right. It's good with the center blended in just enough. On the overheads, really important, I also lined up the transients of the snare. This is really important. Make sure that the snare is always in phase and that it's lined up perfectly. And then the overheads are also lined up separately to the snare. This way you get really clear transients, which carries the most information. Okay, transients carry the most information. If you can get clear transients, you have good sound for everything else. So as you can see, I didn't even treat these separately. I just treated them together as a group. To me, overheads are one instrument, to be honest. So I think it's best to treat them as a group. The tape doesn't matter, just a bit of color. And then as you can see, I'm doing a little bit of EQing here, so let's go through it. No treble boost here because it's a bit too aggressive. I'm using the treble of this. Again, wide bell, really beautiful, makes it sound bigger, brighter, very good. Otherwise here, nothing. I'm taking out the usual suspects, 400-ish, 3 to 500, the usual suspects on overhead. Bit of a low cut. I didn't want to cut the lows completely because there's a lot of beautiful low-end information here that I want to keep. A really narrow cut around 5 kilohertz, which is, again, a usual suspect. Most cymbals carry a lot of harshness, around 4, 5, 5.5 kilohertz, okay? So you usually end up having to cut a little bit there. And then I'm smashing this Neve channel a little bit, and a little bit of compression that I added much later, actually, just to shave off the snare a little bit more. Let's have a look. Again, most importantly, you can see I am not using a lot of compression. I'm compressing 1 dB here, just to keep it steady. You don't have to use a lot of compression. Awesome. So these are the overheads, very simple. Just get rid of what you don't want and boost what you do want. That's the basic philosophy for mixing, in my opinion. And also first listen, identify the problem, and then act. Don't just start boosting stuff because you saw me doing it or someone else on YouTube, Listen, identify, act. Let's have a look at the room. So the client actually had a few references for me regarding drum sound, and he wanted a really kind of roomy, but also a little bit of a crushed tone for the drums. And when he sent me the recording, I went through the tracks and I realized, okay, we can achieve that using the rooms, because this is a really good room that this kit was recorded in. And it really was the perfect opportunity to crush the rooms a little bit to get a really, really gritty and aggressive sound. So I'm not using any compression anywhere else, but here I'm making the room really gritty on purpose. Let's have a look at the rooms. So as you can hear, there's a lot of really beautiful low end, it's really good. The treble is very smooth, which is very important, and it's very balanced, it's a very clean sound overall. We have the usual suspects again, a bit of the lower mid-range, which is in the way, but otherwise it's a really, really well balanced, very beautiful room tone. Sounds great. So let's have a look at what I have done. Very little on this EQ, I'm just cutting out the usual kind of harshness of the cymbals, which was a bit lower. I remember doing this after the kit was already mixed. I listened to the song again before submitting it to the client and I realized, hey, there's something that I don't like, something that is bothering me, so let's find out where it is, and I found it in the room mics. And then here's where the magic happens. Here I'm doing quite a bit, okay? Let's have a look. I'm flipping it in phase just to make sure it's in phase with the, well, polarity. Actually, it's not phase, it's polarity. I'm flipping the polarity of the rooms just to match the overheads and the kick. As you can see, I'm reducing the usual 360-ish hertz. I'm reducing a little bit of the lows because I'm compressing it a lot and I don't want the lows to trigger all of the compression. The lows kind of come back after the compression because the mid-range will get squashed a little bit. SSL channel doesn't matter, and then the distortion. I'm turning this off for now because that's more of a special effect than tone shaping, really. Let's have a look at the EQ. So this is really aggressive, but it really works in conjunction with everything else. Let's have a look at the compression. And the distortion. So this is playing throughout the song, but something cool that I want to show you is that I actually automated this one and another parallel compression chain that I'll show in a sec to become louder when it comes to these tom hits. So this is really cool, it really makes the drum sound really huge for that section. So these are the room mics. Now, all of my drums go into a group which is my drum bus down here. I'm just using a SSL bus, again, nothing crazy, and I'm using this compressor here. So because the client wanted a rather crushed tone, I'm doing this on the drum bus. So I have a lot of crushiness from the rooms, but I wanted a bit more on the bus as a whole. I don't usually do it, but this is a really particular style now where I thought that this might be cool. So let's have a look. What this does, it's on fast settings as well. This is a Neve 2254 emulation, really, really good compressor on vocals, drums, and everything else. As you can see, I'm only compressing around 3 dB, but it's such an aggressive setting that it really brings out more of the room, okay? Because I'm making the top quieter, so the room that is a bit quieter in the mix becomes louder in the end. So this is really cool, and then I am using, actually I'm not using it. Wow, I'm not doing anything on this. So This is in my opinion what a really good drum recording should be, and this is my way of mixing it for this particular song. Now, one thing I can still show you is the parallel compression which I'm using, which again is also this Lindell at a really aggressive setting. I can show you in isolation. So this adds a lot of pump to the whole kit, okay? But this is automated a lot. So I'm starting really quiet and it's going up and down in the different sections, and towards the end of the song it just stays there. The room goes up and down for the toms. So as you can see, there's a progression in the mix, which I think is really important. Let's have a listen to the whole kit. Coolio! I love this a lot. And then finally I added just a bit of reverb on these tom hits, just two different reverbs. I'll make another video about my approach to reverbs. So I'm using one that has a lot of early reflections and one that has a bit more of a tail. That's only for the toms. I can show you in isolation. Just so it has a bit more sustain, because I'm gating them quite heavily, so I want them to have a bit more sustain after it as well. But most of the tone, as you can hear, comes from the room and the overhead. So these toms, without the overheads, and the rooms, they don't do nothing. Okay, this is how you get a big drum sound, the rooms. That's what matters. Cool, let's have a look at another instrument, which is the bass. Really well recorded as well. Let's have a look without anything. So there's a bit of a Queen vibe going on here. What I'm looking out for bass is, again, a really balanced tone that carries a lot of low end. It should have some presence, you know, you can hear the fingers clearly on the strings, which is very important, so the bass cuts through. The lows should be nice and round, and it shouldn't be getting louder or quieter in different sections. Now, recording a good bass can be very difficult as well, because it does require a good bass guitar and someone who can play that instrument really well. If you're not a professional bassist, use a pick, because you will get a much more even sound. Make sure it stays at the same position. Don't use your fingers, because your fingers might be differently strong. The hits might have different strength. So it's better to use a pick to get a more even sound, if you're not a professional bassist, that is. And what I'm doing here is cutting out a little bit of the resonance first. I actually did this after the song was already mixed again, because I noticed that in this one riff it became a bit too loud. Normally I would try to fix this with a multiband compressor just to really be triggered by this frequency, but it didn't quite work, so I said, okay, never mind, I'll just use an EQ and get rid of it. And then I am using a little bit of compression first, followed by the EQ. Now, why I'm compressing first? I'm compressing first because I knew that I wanted a bit more low end on this, and I wanted a bit more of the good stuff, essentially. Okay, I wanted more attack, more fingers, more growl. But if I do the EQ first, then the compressor will be triggered very differently. So to me, it was very important to first make the dynamics relatively even on this bass, and then move on and add the things that I wanted. Let's have a look. Okay, it is louder, but you can still hear it's also more even. So then I'm adding a little bit of subs around 60, reducing a bit more of the 400, and I'm starting to build up my grit around 4K. So again, it's important to compress the bass first and then boost lows if you need to, because with the compression you even out the whole the dynamics of the bass. Okay, so your boost will be much more steady. It won't be fluctuating together with the dynamics of the performance. And then I'm using this Neve EQ to boost the 3.2, 1.6, which are the usual suspects. Again, to me, 1.6 is the growl, 3.2 is the fingernails on the strings, and then at 800 you have some beautiful presence and body as well. I'll show you in a second. So without it. This will cut through beautifully. So let's have a look at the individual frequency just so you can see. And this is uniformly true to basically every bass guitar. I don't know why, it just happens to be. Let's have a look at the 800. Okay, so 800 and 1.6K is the growl, what I would call the growl. And then 3.2 is the nice presence of the fingers or the pick. So this is it for bass, really. Nothing crazy, bit of compression, bit of EQ, and it sits really, really well. Let's quickly have a look at the rhythm guitar. So this is not the best guitar recording I have ever heard, but it is still very good. Let's have a look at what I aim for. So this recording is a bit boxy for me, but at least it's not harsh and it's not muddy, so it's relatively easy to fix this problem. So I'm using a bit of EQ, there was a bit of harshness here still. Tape, doesn't matter, and here a bit more treble and a bit more body, and then compression. So not the best recording, but it really works in the context of the song as a whole. And as a last one, let's have a look at the vocal, okay? I've done quite a bit to this vocal, but that's only to make it work in the context of this particular mix. You don't have to do this much. I did a lot, but it's not necessary because this recording is really good. Let's have a look.
Into the role you accepted long ago, getting old, getting fat, and collecting cats. Sit and stare at the walls where your shadow barely falls, and know you won't again be seen in someone else's dream. Call it.
So it's already quite even, it's not muddy, it's not harsh, so it has all the ingredients to be a really good vocal. It's also a decent performance, you know, I really like the voice of the singer, it's a very unique voice I find. But most importantly, it's not too roomy, it's not too harsh, and it's not too muddy. It's a nice balanced tone that can be shaped into anything that you want it to be later on. A little bit of tape, I can bypass this EQ. I can make this sound great with only 3 plugins. Actually, we don't even need this. I don't even need this. We only need this one EQ and 1 compressor, which should be the lucky one today. Let's make it this one.
Falling into the role you accepted long ago, getting old, getting fat, and collecting cats. Sit and stare at the walls where your shadow barely falls, and know you won't again be seen in someone else's dream. Call it wrong, call it sad.
Now this is a really good example here that compression usually tends to bring out some issues, and I like to fix these issues before I hit the compressor, okay? This is why I did a bit of EQing after I applied my compression, because I heard that it brought out a little bit of the mud. I'm gonna just delete these and start from scratch.
Falling into the role you accepted long ago, getting old, getting fat, and collecting cats. Sit and stare at the walls where your shadow barely falls, and know you won't again be seen in someone else's dream. Call it wrong, call it sad, call it life, call it crap, call it truth, call it your last. Falling into the role.
There you go, this is it. So it's a different chain that I used originally for the mix, just to, you know, show in real life how I would approach this. but this still works. I would be happy to use this, but I'm just gonna copy my old settings. The rest of the instruments are not that interesting for this, I believe, but I'll make another video in the future when I receive a song that has some interesting or really good recording in it. What I do want to show you is now one last thing is what should a good mix sound like before you start applying your master bus processing and before you send it to your mastering engineer, okay? So let's pick a chorus and the verse here. Yeah, this is the finished mix after all the processing has been added, after all the automation has been done, and everything else has been completed. Let's have a look.
Turn around, invisible girl, as you become aware you need more from this world. You want someone to share all your pain and your joy. If you only could see that invisible boy. And what did you do when somebody looked at you? When they tried to pull you free from the scenery? Did you open like a rose? Did you wilt all exposed? Did you freak out and hide? Did you thrive outside? Call it fear.
Cool, so as you can hear, there is a noticeable difference in the before and the after, but it's not crazy, and I don't want to change the original mix. I don't want to change the song. I don't want to change the feel. I want to emphasize it, okay? Andrew Shepp said it really beautifully. Mixing is about solving creative issues with technology, and this is exactly what I believe we are doing here. So this is just the mix. This is what a mix can or should sound like in this case. But then on my master bus, I add a few things that are part of my tone, okay? So I would send these to the mastering engineer, and that's actually what I will do once the mix is approved. I'll send it together with this, and this. I have showed you my master bus processing in a previous video, so just look that up. Now let me just show you before and after all of these.
Turn around, invisible girl, as you become aware you need more from this world. You want someone to share all your pain and your joy. If you only could see that invisible boy. And what did you do when somebody looked at you? When they tried to pull you free from the scenery? Did you open like a rose? Did you wilt all exposed? Did you freak out and hide? Did you thrive outside? Call it fear.
I'll show you one of them, just so you can see that I put my money where my mouth is. In the loudest section of the song, my master bus compressor is moving about 2 dB, maybe 2.5. So we don't need to squash mixes to make them sound good. As a matter of fact, the less compression used, the bigger your mix will most likely sound. That's what I believe. Cool, so this was a bit of a longer video. I hope it was useful and helpful and you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know your comments. I will have some more videos in the future where I will elaborate on different instruments as I receive them. I also will make a video soon about my approach to reverbs, which I touched on a little bit here, but I'll talk about it a lot more in the future. Yeah, so thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and do all of that stuff. You know, it really helps the video get out and get a bit more notice. And I'll be seeing you in the next video. Take it easy, happy mixing, bye-bye.